Hi, everybody. Nikki here. Welcome to the User Research Strategist podcast. This is a very new intro, and I obviously want to say, welcome to the Dear Nikki podcast. But I am very happy to call this the User Research Strategist podcast, the new rebrand. And I am even happier because we have an amazing guest speaker, Dale, with us today. Hi, Dale.
Hello, thank
Hey.
you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. Do you mind giving everybody a quick intro, please?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for having me as well. It's an honor to be invited on. So yeah, as has been mentioned, I'm Dale. I'm a host of a podcast myself, so the UXR Minds Podcast. So it's a bit strange to be on the other side of the of the microphone today. But I'm also a UX researcher. So I've been in the UX research field in particular for the past 4 years, more or less. So still kind of new to the research and especially UX world. But I've got a background in kind of a mixed background in education. So I've taught, I used to teach languages. I've also taught music. And then I made a transition over to customer care and then customer experience. Loved it. Well, I love the customer experience side, maybe not the customer support, but maybe we'll get onto that. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then eventually discovered research, user experience research in particular, and then yeah, transitioned over.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. I know a lot of people who have made that switch from customer support to user research, and a
Yes.
lot of people held that same sentiment of nice to be connected to the customers, but not so nice to be support.
Yeah, this I had two specific roles. So one was for Microsoft or like an on Microsoft project, wasn't directly for Microsoft, and one for Fiat or the Fiat group. Both very different experiences. Like the Fiat, well, it all comes down to the product that you're supporting. So obviously for the Fiat group, that was, I would say, for the customers, obviously their car when it broke down, like you were dealing with their life that was like on hold, like they couldn't get to their job, they couldn't pick up their kids from school. So like they already came onto the phone in a panic or annoyed because their car had been in a garage for a month.
Yeah.
Whereas for Microsoft, it was a bit different because you're just dealing with setting up licensing or, I don't know, wanting to buy a Microsoft package. So the whole experience with the customer was different, which obviously affects the kind of support you're offering and how it is for you to deal with that customer. So yeah, I had both sides, like bad sides and good sides.
Absolutely. Which I feel like most jobs have.
Of
Yeah.
course.
I'm like, ooh, recruitment, no. But
Yeah.
that's how I always feel actually about, in the airport when you have the ticketing counter at the gate,
I
people who are behind that counter, I'm like, I am sure you have stories because as you said, people might be coming are more likely probably to be coming to them in an agitated state.
absolutely, yes. You're already on the back foot with the customer, trying to save face for the customer, for the company or the airline or whoever you're. Because that was always the tricky part as well, because you're the front of the company. So I was always trying to remember, like, they're not attacking me. Like, even if like they do, and I was insulted to high heaven many times. I even had one customer say that I wanted their kid to die, like because their airbag light was on and their car was out of warranty. I was like, well, it's not really, I don't want your kid to die. Like, that's not what I want. But obviously, you're like tied by like policy and obviously what the company allows you to provide and like in terms of supporting customers. So it's always like a tricky line or fine balance to find, like between helping the customer and like saving face of the customer. So yeah, I've been in some tricky spots, like trying to tie that fine balance.
Yeah, that's not a very nice thing to hear.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, I get it. I think people it's just like the internet, right? You have
Yeah,
trolls
absolutely,
and
yeah.
it just makes it easier for people to be meaner to others.
Yeah. And you're
Fortunately.
just you're a voice behind the telephone and they just like I'm calling Fiat, they don't know who you are. So yeah, like I always tried to keep that in my mind. Like when these customers were like insulting me, it's like okay, they don't know who I am. But that's also a hard thing because you want them to like realize like look, I'm a normal person. I'm just here trying to do my job. Like I don't want your kid to die.
Yeah. Yeah, like why even? Oh,
Exactly.
oh, speaking of kind of, I guess, like less human interactions or interactions a bit devoid of human nature, do
Mm.
we want to talk about job hunting?
Wow, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a whole nother ball game.
It's a nice transition, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, can you just, yeah, talk through, because I know you're in the job hunt
Yeah.
looking for your next opportunity and role.
Yes.
And so do you mind just kind of talking through your experience with that recently?
Yeah, wow. Where do I begin?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I would say so. My last role ended back in March, so I think now it's going to be 6 months. My maths is terrible. That's probably why I'm in this role and not data analyst or data science. So yeah, it's been around 6 months, and it's been tough. And I know probably people listening, and I know for sure people listening to my podcast and reach out that's probably even rookie numbers in terms of waiting for your next role. I know people have been in the job hunt for years, but my own personal experiences, it's been really tough because you do think, okay, because probably better to backtrack. The last time I was looking for a job was in a position where I didn't have the experience that I have now. So I'd maybe just had freelance experience, which is probably harder to sell because you've had to build up that work yourself, and maybe it's not what an employer is looking for. They want to see, okay, does this person have contract like experience or in-house experience? So that was probably harder to sell. But obviously, I eventually got a role in-house, which I thought, okay, next time I'm going to be looking for a job, I'm going to be in a better position because I've got that in-house experience now. And even with a startup as well, which can also be kind of unique from a UX research in particular point of view, because not many startups hire like specialist UX researchers. So I thought, okay, I'm going to be in a better position, and went into it a lot more positively, but finding it again tough. Obviously, due to the job market as it stands at the moment, there's a lot of layoffs I've noticed. So it's been tough even just to get interviews. Like I've been reworking my portfolio, trying to review my resume with various seniors in the field who have been really kind to help me, but still finding it tough to even get that initial interview. So my inbox at the moment is just awash with rejection responses. So yeah, mentally it can also be tough
Yeah.
reading those.
Oh, I'm sure I have received my fair share of rejection emails, and I feel like they run the spectrum of sorry, bye, or not nothing at all,
Or
right?
nothing at all, yeah.
Or nothing at all to actual feedback on
Yeah.
why you might not have been moved to the next stage. And I'm wondering, in your experience, have you had that spectrum of responses?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've started because in the past I didn't really track. I noticed a lot of people on LinkedIn share their experience with the job hunting. And I noticed a lot were kind of tracking it. So just to understand the percentage of responses, ghosting, things like that. I've started doing that. And that's, yeah, one thing I've noticed is a lot of them. So in the past, I was struggling to keep tabs on how many I was applying to versus how many were actually responding. I was kind of losing. Okay, so that one responded. Did those respond? And I go back through my email inbox and realize I never responded. So I've been tracking that a lot more. And yeah, I would say off the top of my head, when I last looked at my my tracking statistics, at least 60% were just not replying. And sometimes you're not sure whether that's you, like, because that's always the inner battle as well. Is it me? Is it my application or my resume that's like triggering that they're not responding, that you're just not worth a response because you're just nowhere near what they're expecting? Or is it just their policy, how they work? But then, yeah, and then probably the next 35% are just clearly automated responses. So like a lot of we were inundated with lots of candidates, and unfortunately we're not moving to the next stage. And then the next 5% might be a bit more personalized, and that's personalized between the same sort of response, but you can see that someone wrote it.
Mhm.
and then maybe 0.5% actual feedback. That's probably like the misery numbers that I'm receiving at the moment. And yeah, it's always, like I said before, you're always self-analyzing, like, is it my applications that are giving that sort of feedback, or I can't think of the right words, but you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So yeah, so that can be, I don't know if that's the same for you, but yeah, like psychologically, that can be hard. Like you have ups and downs, but more, yeah, overall it's psychologically difficult.
Yeah. I remember I mean, I've done applications several times around in my
Mm,
career, and I remember quite a high percentage of ghosting. Um,
yeah,
and it's the same, to be fair, it's also the same in consultancy work because you're constantly kind of like trying to send proposals out
yeah,
and like apply in a
pitching.
very different way.
Mm,
But like even with that kind of work, I mean, like I got ghosted completely by a
yeah,
client who was like, fantastic. This is so
yeah.
interesting. And you're kind of like, is it though?
Because then you get ghosted. Yeah, that's the thing. And also, I've had that as well, where like people have reached out to me. So like it happened a few times, especially when I posted on LinkedIn that I was like up for, because I was told by my previous company that my contract wouldn't be extended.
Yeah.
Um, so like I think that was around January time. So I posted on LinkedIn to anticipate that I would be leaving in March. And I had two or three that reached out to me, so I didn't even reply, like, or let's say send proposals to them or an application to them. I was like, yeah, sure. And then 2, 3 weeks pass, and then you kind of like, should I reach out? Like, is that too eager? And it's always that inner battle again. I don't want to be too desperate, but I also need a job and I want to follow up. And then I followed up, and then nothing, and then maybe a few excuses, and then just nothing. And then you're in the position of, was it me? But then you're thinking, well, they reached out to me, so yeah. So it's kind of it's kind of that again fine balance between trying to remain positive and realize that it's not you most of the time, but also realizing that you do sometimes need to maybe adjust your approach, or maybe you do need to review your resume with a professional or with somebody that was successful and maybe were in your position, and see how they like managed to find their first role, and just seeing if there's anything that you can refine. But eventually I think it also comes down to luck and just yeah, timing and yeah, all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious in terms of if somebody is feeling a bit stuck, are
Mm,
there any tips that you have in terms of changing that approach and trying something new or different?
mm. So I think in terms of tips, I would say if you're not already active on LinkedIn, make sure that you are. That's something that's helped me, even if it's hard to say helped me because I'm still without a role, but it's helped me at least get more support. And I think that's a huge thing, that you don't want to isolate yourself too much or feel isolated in the job hunt, because that can be lonely and it can make it tougher mentally. So just being more present on LinkedIn, commenting, also sharing your experience as well, because maybe that resonates with someone who's in the same position as you. Can create a little community, you can share tips and ideas, and then also by being more active on LinkedIn, you might come across more opportunities. So that's one tip. And the second tip, what's not worked for me in the past is just cold applying for jobs. So going on the job boards and just sending your CV into the abyss. I've never had any job offer from in my whole life, not even in UX. I've never like received a job offer that way. Maybe it's worked for some people, but for me it's not. So kind of connecting it to the first tip by being active on LinkedIn, that can help you get those, apply for those opportunities in the non-traditional way.
Mm.
So by just connecting with a recruiter or with someone who's hiring, or someone can tag you in a post where they are hiring. And also, yeah, so not just cold applying to those applications, but reaching out directly to a head of UX if you are in UX or research. Connecting on LinkedIn. So I've done that a few times, and that's even just led to conversations, even if it's not led to an offer. but just being able to converse with them, and sometimes they can give you feedback and say, yeah, like your portfolio looks good or whatever, and then maybe they can give you a bit of feedback for if an opportunity ever arises at their company, or at least you're in a better position to apply for another role. But yeah, so just kind of applying the non-traditional way, kind of via just direct outreach, or even just sending an email. I've done that as well, sending just an email to a company, just kind of presenting myself. And that's led to conversations as well. So just, that also helps you, I found as well, just keep mentally positive because you're trying new things. It keeps you active. Rather, because when you get into a rut of just applying for like 50, like on a job board, applying to 50 jobs and just sat there waiting, it keeps you active mentally as well, which helps me because I have a tendency to go up and down with my personality, so that can help me keep active, in that sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It feels more, yeah, like we're not in control of anything,
Yeah.
really. Like when it comes down to it, nobody's in control of like anything at
No.
all. But it gives a sense of more, I'm actively trying to do something rather than
Yes.
passively applying.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's super important because that has a knock-on effect. If you're passively just applying to jobs, then you will just be passive in also your presence on LinkedIn and just passive in all areas of your life. So it's good to be proactive and always kind of looking for different ways to find opportunities. And it helps you to be more creative as well. And also, like in your next role, you'll be better off for it because maybe you learn new things in that journey in trying to find a job because you have to be creative. So it will add another string to your bow. And also, in the meantime, you might make new connections that can help you in the future. Also, just maybe through a learning resource, like you'll be able to learn from those people that you've connected with. So I agree completely.
Yeah. And if I'm somebody who's shy and introverted and maybe doesn't like to write or post on LinkedIn, maybe commenting's fine, right?
Yeah.
How do I reach out and connect with people, maybe even peers? I mean, I know personally, I do have a lot of people who reach out to me on LinkedIn, and unfortunately, they do just like kind of attach their resume and they're like, can you give me feedback? And I'm not gonna lie, I don't respond to everybody
No, of course,
because that
that
would be
kind.
a full-time job. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there are kind of strategic and kind ways maybe
Mm,
to connect with people and ask for
yeah.
feedback.
Yeah, that's also something I've been conscious of as well. Because when I first started in UX, my mentor mentioned that to me. He said, be yourself. So I'm naturally shy. You might not think it having a podcast, being a researcher and talking to people all the time. Like I love talking to people and just like helping community, but naturally I am shy and introverted. So for me, like the idea of reaching out to people, even if it was just sending a message, was hard for me because I was worrying about what would come next. Like, oh, maybe they want to call with me, and how will I react with that and deal with that? So I think just being yourself, like you don't need to be somebody you're not. You don't need to be extroverted or like in somebody's face to be successful or find a job or anything like that. So I think in this case, that especially what you mentioned now, is make your messages personal, but don't go into it expecting to get something back. Make it just an aim to make a connection and get to know somebody. Because if you go in straight away, like and just attach your CV or attach your portfolio, you might get a response, and that's good if you do. But more often than not, that person has, well, in all cases, that person already has their own life. They have a job, and like in your case, you've got like millions of different things you're doing with podcast and your consultancy stuff. So that person is going to be busy, so they might not have the time to give you that direct personal feedback. But just do it in a way to make an initial connection, like hi, and also make your introduction personal. Don't just copy and paste. Because I've noticed that as well. Some people have reached out to me like because they see my podcast and they think that I'm hiring or something, which I'm
Yeah,
looking for a job myself.
I know.
And then, yeah, they just attach their portfolio, their CV, and just want feedback. And you can see that they've just changed my name, like they've just added my name into a script, and that can be like I try to respond, but it's hard to keep up. And like you say, it'd be a full-time job for me personally as well. So yeah, make it personal and don't go into it expecting to get feedback on your CV or portfolio. Just view it as a way to grow your network and also just learning from them. So because once you make that connection, obviously all of their content will be on your feed. So just view it as a way to introduce yourself, who you are, and boom. I wouldn't, if you want, obviously in that conversation, you might be able to lead to like conversation where you can get feedback. But yeah, don't initially just drop your CV in and expect something, because that's going to put that person in a position, like you mentioned before, that they can't reply. And then that person might feel bad because they've not replied. And it's an awkward start to that connection. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that kind of the people that I do actually respond to tend to have that intro. They're like, "Hey, I've followed your stuff. This stuff has resonated with me. You know, I'm in this situation. If you have any advice, I'd appreciate it."
Yeah.
Rather than but either other way, otherwise, like happy to connect and have you in my feed. So
Yeah,
it's not like a demand almost. It's more like
exactly.
I had somebody who was like, "Hey, do you have like a buy me a coffee link, like a tip
Ah,
jar?"
okay. Yeah,
And I was
that's
like, "Well,
nice.
that's really nice."
Can I know them? No, I'm
Yeah, yeah.
joking.
I
No,
was
no,
like, I
that's nice.
don't, but maybe I will.
Maybe I will set one up. No, but that kind of goes into what I was mentioning before. Like you're going into that connection, not only looking to get something out of it, because especially when we're looking for a job, we're desperate, and we all know what it's like. You want to work, you need an income. Like, and I understand that when people do reach out to me, and I really feel for them because I know what it's like. I'm in that situation now, and you're kind of looking at all ways to get some form of like step forward. But just like don't go into those, because just remember that that's a real person on the other side as well, and they have their own difficulties, their own stresses, etc. And their own demands might have a family at home, and they're pulled from pillar to post themselves. If you go in with another demand, like you're already putting that person in a difficult situation to have to ignore you. So yeah, go into it, offer something to them as well. I always try to do that. Obviously with my podcast as well, when I'm networking, usually it's for that as well, that I can offer them, look, maybe we can work something out with a podcast. I can give you exposure. So it's kind of, so that person's going into, okay, I'm giving, but I'm not only giving, like I'm going to get something from this as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious because a lot of people say applying to jobs is a full-time job, right?
Yeah.
And I get that sentiment very much. So
Mm.
how is it that you kind of balance that feeling of
Mm.
maybe some mind numbing, okay, here I am doing this again and again and again. And so how do you balance that just like you would with anything else that's stressful?
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good point as well, and a good question. I think the thing that's helped me is just keep perspective in my life. Like you do need to kind of make it your full-time job, because you do need to work, and you do need to get a structured way to apply for jobs, or structured way that you want to find work, but keep it in its place, because I'm guilty of it as well, that my whole life just revolves around that. So even if I've got a family, I've got social life, etc., I'm always thinking about it, and always thinking of ways that I can be creative in finding a job. And it eats into my evening time. So maybe bedtime routine with my kid, and I'm thinking about, oh, that job, how could you? And then you get very distracted, and that takes away from your personal relationships with, and I've seen the results of that. Because then my kid gets more demanding because he can see that I'm distracting it. And you don't want that to happen. So you need to set clear boundaries with yourself. And that takes self-control. But those skills that you do learn of self-control, etc., you can carry into your work as well. So it's not like lost if you do set those like boundaries and learn those personal skills of self-control, etc. And also you'll find that those moments that you do spend time with family and you have that downtime, it recharges you and it refreshes your mind. So when you do come back the next day or whenever you decide to go back to looking for work, you're energized from that time that you had downtime. It's not lost time, because I'm guilty of feeling that time I'm not looking for work is like time that's ticking away to me finding or getting that next job. But like I said, I'm guilty of it. I still do it in the evenings, especially when maybe I'm supposed to be spending time with my kid or my wife, and she can feel it. So she feels that, oh, your mind's wandering, and then you'll find that both sides of your life are suffering. So your personal time with family or friends or whatever it may be is not beneficial to you because they feel they're losing out from you and you feel you're losing out from them. And then your job hunting time or the time you're dedicating to that, you're mentally tired because you're not recharged from that time with your family. So just setting clear boundaries. It might even be the case of that. That's what helped to me. Have maybe 2 days in the week that I'm just fully on that. It's like long days. And then a day or two pause where I do just full day with family. I feel for me personally, it might not work for everybody, but those two or that full day of just full charge where I'm not thinking about work really helps rather than morning and evening, because I find that maybe in the evening I'm tired mentally and I can't give 100% to my family or my social life. So yeah, that's helped to me. I don't know if it would help everybody, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one because I know some people do, one of my best friends is in a job hunt right now. And so
Mm.
for the first 2 hours of the day, she does tweaking or she looks at job descriptions and tweaks
Yeah.
her resume per those job descriptions.
Mm.
And then in the afternoon, she does some like networking and applying
Yeah.
because that's like easier for her. And
Yeah.
that's like when her brain needs to recharge a little bit. And then she
Yeah.
puts it away at a certain time, just like you would hopefully would a job. I know that that's hard to do.
Yeah.
But I also like that time she does take Wednesdays
Okay.
and she goes and she's like, well, I'm not gonna always have this. So it's also
Mm.
like, how do I take advantage a little bit in
Yeah.
this not so great situation still of the time that
Mm.
I do have and what can I do during that?
Yeah.
So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think as well, something to add to that, that obviously when you are looking for jobs, maybe you are balancing between applying for jobs and like with your friend, tweaking resumes or connecting on LinkedIn, whatever. But also set some time aside within that to do some personal growth, whether it's learning a new skill that you could use within that, or reading a book, or something connected to your job, or something that you feel could improve yourself, like in any form. So then that is something that's also benefiting you, because when you are looking for a job, you might feel that you're just giving, you're just like applying for jobs, I'm trying to sell myself, and it's all like out. And this is something that I've worried about as well, that the longer you're out of the role, the job, you feel that you're getting a bit rusty. So it might be a case of that. Something I do as well is volunteer. So set a couple of hours a week aside that you can volunteer in your specific role, whether that's research or design. So at least you're keeping your skills sharp, you're learning new things, or just learning a new skill completely, that maybe one day will help you in your role, or just be something, a personal growth, something you've always wanted to do. Now that you've got the time to do that, learning a language or whatever it may be.
One of my students, she was out of work for a year looking for a job. And in that year, she learned a new language and then was
Oh,
able to like position herself as a bilingual researcher.
there we go.
I was like, wow,
That's incredible.
what a win. Because she did like really intensive. She got really into it. It was like her
Mm.
other job.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, she like really because she was like, if I don't do it now, I'm never gonna do it. Kind
Yeah,
of
exactly. Yeah.
feeling because she's like, I know I'm gonna get work again.
Mm.
And I know I'm never going to have that chance. And now she's like a bilingual user researcher. And I was like, a way to
That's
be
incredible.
unique. Like, yeah. So
That's
I think,
incredible.
yeah, there is some thought about trying to balance those times and
Mm.
yeah, have that time for growth.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're just coming up to time right now, but is there one piece? I know this is a horribly difficult question. If there is one piece of advice that you had for somebody who's in the job hunt right now, what
Mm.
might that be?
Um, always, always on the spot these ones,
Okay.
because it's no, no, don't worry. There's so many like to choose from that I have heard from others. So
Yeah.
I would just say, be yourself. Like, don't feel like to find a job that you need to change who you are to find the next job. Um, I always had this battle that I need to be somebody. The reason why I'm not in a job is because I need to be somebody different, or I need to have a different skill, or I need to be better at this or that. But just be who you are. Like you as yourself, you are going to bring something positive to your next job, to that company. So go with that. So when you do get interviews or on your application or when you're networking or whatever, show your strong points, like be yourself and love them, love yourself and love your strong points and also your weaknesses, because your weaknesses are the things that make you who you are as well and that you can learn from. So don't feel you need to change who you are to fit into your next role or to please your next next hiring manager. Just be yourself, and also in those interviews, remain true to yourself, because I've been guilty of it, of like trying to, I don't know, be something I'm not in interviews and in applications, but just be yourself. View your next applications, your next interviews as also a moment to learn and to grow, and also to find out if that next job, that next interviewer is a place where you'd like to work. So kind of flip it. And I think that will help with your mindset as well. But yeah, stay true to yourself.
I love that. I think that's, yeah, perfect place for us to stop. So thank you so much, Dale. It was a pleasure to speak
No
today.
problem. Thank you to you. Thanks again for the invite. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks.